Have you ever felt a little constricted in therapy, either as a therapist or a client? I know I have, and today we're peeling back the layers with Carah Elizabeth, who is a therapist turned embodied life and business coach. We chat all about the limitations of therapy and how integrating body and spirit are vital to the healing process. You'll hear Carah's work as a trauma therapist create a foundation for needing safety within the body in order to do the in-depth work of healing. We talk about everything from chakras to masculine, feminine energy, and psychedelics. This was such a fun one. If you are new here, you're listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. And my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast, you guys. Today is so fun. I can already feel it. We have Carah Elizabeth, who's an embodied life and business coach and former therapist, or should I just say therapist?
Yeah, either one. I like to say therapist gone rogue.
Yes. I love it. And Carah, you're in Arizona, right?
I am.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so I am a therapist. We're just going to jump right in, guys. I am a therapist, and I felt the limitations of therapy. There are great, boundaries around it for very good reasons. But I think it's kind of a little bit constricting. And so tell us your journey on becoming a therapist, and then what was the catalyst to bust out?
Yes, I love this question. So I decided to become a therapist when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
I had an experience. I was going through an eating disorder, and I had an experience with a therapist, and she told me I was going to die because I put fat-free dressing on a salad that week. And I got up and, in all of my 14, 15-year-old glory, and I told her, I said, I would rather burn in hell eating the world's largest chocolate bar than come back into this office and meet with you again. And I walked out and I never went back.
Oh, wait, you're triple fire.
I am quadruple fire. So my Mercury is also in fire sign. So my communication skill is very direct and very on point. And so that's what that is. Yes. And so I walked out and I told my mom, I said, I'll figure this out on my own. And I did. And it wasn't great and it wasn't easy. And I still had ups and downs. And I did eventually return to therapy. But in that moment, what I said to my parents is I said, I never want somebody to feel the way that I did in that office. So I'm going to become a therapist so that nobody has to.
Wow.
And I did. I mean, it took me, however many years, 20 years to do it. And I did. And I really enjoyed it. And I worked with eating disorders, and I worked with significant trauma, and I worked with women in confidence. And it was beautiful until it wasn't. Because I had wanted to make this big impact. Like so many therapists go into this field to make this impact. And then you realize, you can only support so many people. You can only make such an impact. And I had an experience where I had grown this private practice, this group practice. I had 4 therapists under me. We had grown to $500,000 years. I mean, it was beautiful. We were out 6 months wait list. Like we were clearly needed and a resource for the community. And then we had a billing issue. I went cash pay. And so we notified everybody that their insurance was no longer going to be covering. And the insurance company of one client decided to terminate the contract immediately without telling me when I had given my 90-day notice. And this wasn't even my client. This was one of my supervisee's clients. And she filed a complaint against my professional license. She filed a complaint against my clinical license, which is entirely possible. It took me 10 months of going to meetings, of submitting all the clinical documentation for this client that, again, I had never met. It wasn't my client.
Wow.
To the Board of Behavioral Health. And I said, you know what? This is really messed up. Can I swear? Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yes.
I said, this is really fucked up. The fact that my professional license could be at jeopardy because of a billing issue that has nothing to do with clinical care. Nothing to do with, I was like, this is messed up. And I really started to feel I've always really not felt in alignment with the board. It was always something I was told to fear, and I was moving out of the fear state. I was really, getting into my own spirituality, getting into my own energy, really moving beyond therapy as a healing practice for myself. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I had built so many skills, including Reiki and yoga and somatic, and I was incorporating them within my therapeutic practice, which I was then told I wasn't allowed to by the board, even though my client said I was incorporating these somatic things, We're making progress leaps and bounds ahead of just the cognitive therapy. And I said, you know what? I don't need it. And I left. I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring both of my businesses into one at this point because, yes, the therapy is important, but so are all of these other things because we are not just the mind, psychology, psyche, mind. We are not just the mind. Trauma disconnects us from the body. And until we bring the body into the equation and the energy system, which is way woo and way outside of scientific realm, until we bring it all together, until we are healing the whole person, the whole being, we're not healing trauma as effectively as we could. And we're just perpetuating the cycle of the medical model, of therapy, of keep people sick enough, keep people, just seeing enough improvement to continue to come back, to continue to pay, to continue to invest, without actually fully allowing them to be healed.
Yes. Oh, I feel this deep in my bones. I feel like the last, 4 years at least, wanting to incorporate the body, now wanting to incorporate the spiritual part. And I know like a little bit of everything, but I'm a refer out girl. I'm like, go see this girl for somatic, go see this girl for this, But you incorporated all of it like that. I'm just too tired to do that. But I also, so I admire that, right? That like there's something missing and I want to go get more training on that. And then because it is important. I just feel like we're just hitting one thing. And I think we're becoming more and more aware, especially I think somatic has really had a big push these last few years. Yes. Maybe 10 years. And then now I feel like it's spiritual that's coming forward. Do you feel the same way or?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is part of kind of my mission to really support therapists and to expand. And part of what I see is people are choosing coaching over therapy because it is more all-inclusive. However, this isn't necessarily safe. This isn't necessarily the best option because a lot of the coaches are not trained in any format. They've done a lot of their own personal work, but they don't have ethics. They don't have their own integrity necessarily behind it. They're just regurgitating what they've done themselves or what they've gotten a certificate on. And boy, don't get me started on the bullshit certificates out there. It's about incorporating it all together and having all of the pieces of that puzzle. And I always tell people that ask me for recommendations on what certificate should I get. I say, don't get a certificate. Do some work yourself. Do the work first. Like that's how I did it. I went into Reiki. I was receiving Reiki. I was doing yoga. I was receiving somatics. And then after I had peeled back the layers for myself, I was like, okay, now let me do some formal training so I can bring this all together for my clients.
Yeah. Okay, I have chills on my body. What I'm hearing you say is we need to invent a third category of former therapists turned coach, because the word coach literally makes my skin crawl. Like life coach is, and I think that's coming from a little bit of snootiness for like, oh, I'm a therapist, I'm like,
Absolutely.
But also there are really valuable things around containment and trauma and all the stuff, but there also can be really scary, shitty therapists too. So
absolutely. I just did a post on that. I just did a reel and I just had a slew of stories about my own recent coaching experience. So I agree. The term coach kind of,
but there's no other word because you can't legally say you're a therapist unless you could say I'm a therapist, but you can't say it. Licensed therapist.
You can't say licensed. That's the thing. So here's the really funny thing. So I just went through Instagram to change my profile. Again, I don't know if it's gone through yet because, it takes a minute to re-add psychotherapist to my tagline. Because the reality behind it is what we need to recognize is therapist and therapy are generic terms. No, right. The only, like my license was licensed professional counselor. I had a degree in counseling psychology. The only therapist setting that I know that uses the term therapist is marriage and family therapist. But even still, they have that delineation above it. So there are occupational therapists, there are physical therapists. Like, again, therapist is a generic term. So we can use it. And I do feel just in putting psychotherapist back into my profile because I am clinically trained.
Right.
And I very specifically let people know I'm not working under a license anymore.
Right. Exactly. But this is the bullshit that we have to jump through.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
this is what we're talking about, you know?
Yes.
And I, I think the board is, yes, we're just being afraid of them. They that's how they teach you to be afraid of the board.
Yes.
And again, it's like they're always behind in a lot of ways. Even like 2020 happened and we're doing like online therapy and they're like, wait, can you do that?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
so again, I think there's a wave, there's something kind of breaking. And especially with insurance, like not a lot of I don't take insurance, not a lot of therapists take insurance because it's not great for the therapist and it's more work and it's not enough money and it's just not great treatment,
Well, and that brings us to a whole different conversation about therapists and the financial situation of like how disrespected we are. So like therapists, I see a lot on social media, like talking about money and talking about going to cash pay and talking about charging higher rates and being just chastised and bullied and harassed in the comments. It's like, wait a minute. We went to school for 7 years.
Yeah.
We had to do 2 years of
hours,
of clinical supervised hours in most often community mental health. We had to build our reputation. Like we had to build our skill sets. Like why we pay doctors thousands of dollars an hour. We're not asking for thousands. We're not asking for thousands. We're asking for a couple hundred. And that's being seen as because there's this mindset of like, you're going into this to help people, not to serve people, not to make money. Yeah, but our good-heartedness shouldn't be taken advantage of in that context.
Yeah. Again, yes. And I understand that it can be really elite or privileged to be able to afford that.
Yeah.
And so again, this third wave of something paying us well and paying and covering the clients, like I just think things are falling apart to be rebuilt, which is scary and exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the nature. And if we want to get a little spiritual, a little woo-woo here, I mean, this is Kali energy. This is goddess Kali energy, who is the goddess of destruction and rebirth.
Yes.
And so systems have to be destructed, have to be broken down so we can build them back up.
Yes.
In a fresh light, in a new way. And that's what I really think and feel like we are in this season of that from, starting 4 years ago with the mass destruction of all systems. And slowly starting to build it back up.
Right. Exactly.
And as a therapist, if you're a cash pay therapist, you have the agency to decide to do a sliding scale if you want to. I mean, that's the other thing, that is important to recognize. If you really see somebody that you think you can help who really is financially at need, you can say, hey, I'm willing to do a sliding scale with you.
Yeah, exactly. There's options.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of like rebuilding and destroying, so your practice went to shit because of billing. I cannot believe that. And that's
to be faithful, to be completely honest, it didn't go to shit. My energy went to shit because of it. Yeah. Like we were still doing good work. It was like my belief and my faith in the structure and in the foundation of therapy and of what it meant to be a therapist. That's what went to shit.
Yeah. Like it didn't have your back at that point.
No. And that's when I really fully acknowledged the board is not there to protect the therapist. The board is not there even to support the therapist. The board is there to fully support the client at the detriment of the therapist. And so we are the ones that do all this work. We are the ones that jump through all these hoops. And yet they are so quick to cut us down any second they get.
Yeah.
And that's disheartening.
Yeah. Was there other personal things that you were going through that kind of led you down to Reiki and yoga? Like I know for me, it was a lot.
Yeah, well, a big part of it was the board and that fear-based lifestyle, the fear-based training. And so I was raised in fear-based. So the more that I healed my childhood trauma, the more that I healed the patterns of which I was raised, because it wasn't all traumatic, but the more that I healed the patterns of fear that I started to really recognize ran so deep. Like my mom was rooted in fear, my grandparents. I mean, there was so many generations of fear. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I have a son. I'm like, I don't want him to be afraid of things anymore. And he was coming to age. He was starting high school. I was like, this needs to stop. And this started when he was in elementary school too. And so I started really diving into the energy of fear and unpacking that and reprogramming that program in my life, that pattern. And as soon as I started doing that, like it became almost intolerable to be a part of this
A
community.
system.
The system, yes.
Yeah.
That was so rooted in fear, that was so trained in fear, and to see all of the fear around even the supervisees that I had in my practice of like, I'll share a quick story because it just makes me laugh every time. Like this one therapist, and she came from another state, and she was doing her hours under me. And I said, hey, I have this 11-year-old. I think he'd be really good with you. And she's like, well, I can't see kids. And I said, oh, why not? She's like, well, I didn't take that track in school. And I said, what are you talking about? She's like, well, we had to choose a track of like child or adult, and I didn't learn the skills. I didn't learn how to do CBT with kids. I'm like, CBT is the same no matter how you learn it.
Yeah.
And it really was like a light bulb moment. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, there's no different skills. And so that's the thing, is like we're trained and pigeonholed in our education system
Early.
Early.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is messed up. Like I don't want to be a part of this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to think about when we first started versus now. I'm like, whatever, you want to come once a week, you want to come once a month. It's like, what do you need? Whatever. Like it just feels, the more that I can authentically show up as me, the better work that happens,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how we then support our clients. And just like the idea that we're not allowed to share anything about our lives.
Yeah.
And so our clients come and they share the deep darkness within them, their secrets that they've never told anybody else. And we sit there like a blank slate.
Yeah.
Without being able to say like, hey man, me too. I've had that experience. Like I get it.
Yes.
And there's so much healing in relatability. And there's so much of like, it's not just me. Yes. And when we can start to share, and maybe not all the nitty gritty details, like not going into our stories, but being like, I have been there too. I get it.
Yeah.
And I got through it. And that's how I know I can get you through it too.
Yes. Ugh, I love it. I think you are creating the third category.
I'm trying to.
Yes. Yes, it's happening. I mean, and there's a lot of other therapists turned coaches in a really beautiful way. But yeah, I just think it's this new wave, which is really exciting.
It's all encompassing. It's again, the whole being. And my hope is that someday the education system will step up and recognize. And I think we're getting there. I think certain programs are adding somatics. Certain programs are, recognizing. I mean, we have Young, who really addressed energy. Even if he didn't talk about it in certain terms, or even if he isn't the one that we teach in the forefront of training programs. But that's where it really starts, is the education system, because we do need trained and licensed therapists like yourself. Yeah. It's important. Yeah. For our world, our collective.
Yes. I love that. Okay, let's go back to fear a little bit. Can you let us know, like, how did fear show up in your body and energetically? What did that feel like specifically for you?
It shut everything down. Like, it made me so afraid. I had to, like, I was black and white. It was so, like, I have struggled with anxiety. I struggled with depression. I've struggled with OCD in the past because of that rigidness of, like, things had to be a certain way, else I'd be so anxious, or else I'd be, feel defeated. And so in my body, when I really started to reconnect the body and the mind, when I really started to make that connection in the deep trauma work, it was so heavy. And it was so rooted. And so when we talk about the work that I do what I call body wisdom coaching, which is tapping people into their bodies. And fear is a root chakra, is a Muladhara chakra, wounding. And that is, Muladhara, our root chakra, is our safety, structure, security. It is the root. And if the root is not solid, if it is riddled with fear, if it is so constricted and the energy flow isn't allowed to be fluid there, the rest of the system is just going to be off kilter, because it's our root, it's our base, it's our foundation.
Yeah. What are some symptoms of like a blocked root chakra?
Yeah. So, fear, obviously, financial difficulties, difficulties with our bodies, like with getting proper nutrition. Eating disorders are a huge symptom of that, as well as other health and eating issues. A lot of gut health. is also an indication of that. Difficulty sleeping, not being able to like ground down or feel like scattered, like a lot of scatteredness. So I used to have clients
Mhm.
that would come in and we'd talk about presence of mind, and they're like, "Oh, you mean like how I just like walked into that bush in front of your door?" And I'm like, "Yes, because like you weren't paying attention."
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
so
gosh.
clumsiness, is a part of that
Mm,
as well because you're not rooted in this moment. You're not present.
yeah. So that's what you see the most common in, like, if you look at the collective, you're like, this feels like like the most problematic or the most common one that you see first.
You mean like chakra-based wounds, you mean?
Yeah. Like the root
I
being
don't
blocked.
necessarily think that I don't like to classify anything as the worst because there are clearly a lot of different
Yeah.
issues. A lot of people with grief issues, and that's the heart chakra. A lot of people with low confidence, that's the manipura, that's the solar plexus chakra. A lot of people with, difficulty with relationships or with emotion, expressing emotions or hindered emotions, that's the sacral chakra. So I don't think it's just one, but it is an important one that I start with people because until
Yeah.
that is supported, and that's all your basic needs as well. So until your
Hmm.
basic needs are met, even in trauma work, we can't do anything. When I worked with eating disorders, we can't go into the deep core wounds until you are
Hmm.
medically stable, until
Yes.
your body's, needs are met. Your body will not allow you to go deeper. It will
Yeah.
constantly be in survival mode trying to get its needs met for life. And those are nutrition, rest, sleep, security in your environment, love and supportive people around you. And so
Yeah.
that's why I start there because until that's met, until that's taken care of, we can't go in. So we have
Right.
to start with the outers. We have to start with the outer self. We have to start with the physical and
Hmm.
that chakra for sure.
Yes. I love that. Which is a very therapist, is exactly the same thing. It's like, let's
Yeah,
build safety around here so we have a place to
uh-huh.
return to when we go in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So are you doing energy work? Tell us a little bit about one-on-one coaching with you. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I'm doing it one on one at this point. I've been working on a group program, but right now it is just one on one. And it is, a container. And so people often be like, oh, 12 months or 12 weeks to this change. And I don't guarantee any
Hmm. Great.
length of time. So I do
Yeah.
start holding the container with 6 months. I've extended it to 6 months because that really is foundational work and we have to do the foundational work. And then it can move quickly from there. But it is a 6 month container to start with. And yes, I like to start, if people are open to it, with the first session being a Reiki session, which is an energy healing session. And that can be done virtually. It can be done through the distance because when we're dealing with energy, we're just, um, I'm connecting my higher energy with your higher energy. And that I don't need to be in your physical presence for that to happen. But what that allows me to do is to feel into your body and feel where maybe some of those blockages are, or feel where maybe some of that energy isn't flowing as freely.
Yeah.
Feel where maybe there's even illness or discomfort or things like that. But of course, if people aren't open to that, that's okay. We can do that later on if we need to
Uh-huh.
get them into the mindset of that a
No,
little
I'm
bit
into
more.
that. Yeah. I
Absolutely.
actually just did Reiki for the first time with my friend Jess. Shout out to her.
Oh,
She's training, so
mhm,
I've gone twice to her in person. And yeah, it's a wild experience. I felt like coldness on
mhm.
my arms both
Okay.
times, releasing,
Okay.
I guess,
Yeah,
energy. I don't know. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, but
Yeah,
it's,
what else did you feel? Like, explain. I would love to hear your
yeah,
explanation of that.
yeah. Oh, well, every time like I have to swallow and she's like, your throat is literally moving back and forth.
Okay.
And I don't feel that at all. I'm like, what? That's so crazy. And then I have like abandonment, I know is here on this left shoulder. And every time I go there, it's like ice down my arm. Like it feels like somebody has opened a door or turned the AC on or done like icy hot probably is better. And
Mhm.
it's just like freezing. Um, and this last time it was a movement in my stomach, but usually the first time wasn't. It was more up here. I could feel tingling on my crown
Yeah,
chakra every time.
beautiful.
Um, I think it.
Are you open to a perspective on the
Yes.
cold? So I have had that cold experience with breath work and with other healing and energetic modalities.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the freeze response leaving my body.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. So feeling that cold, that actual freeze response of the nervous system, like releasing.
Whoa. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful when I think about like the feelings of abandonment and how I do feel like stuck in that. And like,
Yeah.
ugh, yeah, it makes me so teary.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Absolutely.
love that.
Yeah. And so just knowing it's whether it's
Ugh.
the awareness of that's what that is there, or if it is actually, if you're feeling it actually release out, it's a
Yeah,
beautiful, it's a
both.
beautiful
Yeah.
process.
Yes. Yeah. And it is something that it's like nobody's doing anything, you know? So
Right.
I'm not like, I think that's where the belief comes in because there's an actual sensation that I'm feeling. And I think
Uh-huh.
that's what's really important when you work with the body is to kind of like put those sensations back online, the neutral, the
Yes.
positive, and the negative, that they're all
Mhm.
existing at one time in your
Yeah, and it's
body.
it's about learning the language of the body. So it is about feeling that response and saying, "Hey, what do you have to tell me in this? What is
Yeah.
this freeze? What is this cold trying to tell me? What are you trying to say?" And really
Yeah.
start to get in. And that's ultimately what I do is it's getting into the body so you can learn to have that conversation, that communication. So when things get a little wonky, when your nervous system gets a little off base, you can say, "Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, what's happening here? What am I
Yeah.
feeling? What's actually being triggered or activated in the system?"
Yeah. What does that look like for you on a personal level of like, do you have a certain practice that you do, or do you feel like it's a little bit more organic? Like you just kind of tap in feeling when you need to, or do you feel like you're a little bit more ritualized? Is that a word?
Yeah, it's a great word. So I set myself up. So I started this 5 or 6 years ago where my morning, like I spend anywhere from 2 to 4 hours in the morning
Yes.
doing things. So I wake up and I do my personal Reiki in bed while I'm still laying in bed. I do my
What does
personal
that
Reiki.
look like? You're just going like this?
Yep. Yeah.
Hands over your body?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like tuning in, like sending
Yeah.
the life force energy, feeling into what's wonky and having a conversation with that part of the body, like what's happening, like what do you need today? And then now that it's starting to get warmer out, I'll walk my dog first thing. So that's usually about 5:30 in the morning. We'll go for a walk.
What
And
time are you
then
waking up, girl? What time?
about between 4:30 and 5, yeah.
Oh my gosh. What time you go to bed?
It depends anytime between sometimes it's as early as 8 and sometimes it's as late as 11. Like it just kind of all
Okay.
washes out. So
All
it's
right.
just, yeah.
Great.
And then I hop on my mat and I do a little bit of movement and yoga. And then I go outside and I spend a couple hours on my patio with cacao or tea. And I do some
Uh,
chanting meditation and I listen to the birds and I do some breathing and I do some tapping sometimes. And and
yeah.
then I do like my morning pages where I just free write and get things out. And then I start my day. And
Yeah.
so it tends to, I set myself up in that energy.
Mhm.
So it's easier for me to access when things get thrown off base later on and be like,
Yeah.
okay, I already have my foundation set of calmness and I'm more aware that I'm becoming activated. And so in this moment, I need to step back and I need the hands on my body. It's always usually hands on my body. Sometimes it's standing up and swaying, like self-soothing with a sway. And it's like, hey, what's going on?
I love that. Are you into human design at all? Do you know?
A little
You're
bit. I
human?
don't have a
Do you know
huge,
your type?
I'm a generator, if that's
Okay.
what you're meaning. And then I'm
Yes.
a 2-4, and I don't really
Okay.
exactly know what that means, but
Me neither. Me neither. But I love like if I could spend so much time alone in the morning, like that just sounds like a dream, you know?
Mhm.
Like just
Uh,
this like enclosure time to do whatever felt right in that moment. I'm a little less rigid, a little less structured. But I still, if I have this time, okay, like what feels good for me today. Um, but yeah, I love that. Like, even if you don't have 4 hours, right? This idea of like tapping in, like, how does my body feel? What are the sensations? How's my energy level? Um,
and what
and what do I need?
yeah, absolutely. And what I recommend, because yeah, not ever, I've created my business to accommodate this time in the morning, and I get up really early, so I can still be doing all of that and still be here on this call at 9 o'clock for me.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's possible, but also just it can be really overwhelming for somebody to think, well, I can't do that. I don't have 4 hours. Great, of course not. Of course not. You have kids. So 20 minutes. Can you do 5 minutes of sitting in silence and meditating? Can you do 5 minutes of moving your body? Can you do 5 minutes of writing down, even if it's like, what's ahead of you in your day, and 5 minutes to do whatever else you want to do. It can be as simple as 5 or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and just it's the intention behind it.
Right. Yeah. The intention of caring for yourself.
Yes.
Which
of
we
dedicating
don't
that time.
do. Yeah.
Of dedicating that time to yourself and setting your day up in this energy.
Yeah. What has been your biggest like aha or like personal thing that you've discovered about yourself? Like what was like, because I think that's what happens when you do this internal work, when you have this sacred time to self, there becomes again this like unfolding in a lot of ways. And I'm just curious of what to from from birth to right now, what has felt like the biggest aha or big discovery?
I think for me, it was the awareness that I am a quadruple fire, and that is beautiful. So
Tell me more.
Yes, exactly. So I had a conversation a year or so ago with a friend, like a new friend, and I said I was a quadruple fire, and she's like, I never would have guessed, and I was like, and it was like a slap in the face, like, oh, because I've had so many layers of telling me to tame it down, of you're too much, of be quiet, of don't be so loud, of don't be so like. I was living behind so many masks from early childhood of belief that I was too much, and the awareness that now, like, this is energy and this is beautiful, and I have power, and I have power for a reason, because I have a big purpose on this planet, and that takes big energy.
Yes.
And so being able to fully embody that as true and beautiful and important for me to be who I am, rather than trying to be who other people want me to be, and how that just dimmed my light and made me depressed and made me anxious and made me all these things because I wasn't being true to me. And once I was able to own that, sometimes I'm bitchy in my language. Sometimes I'm really harsh. I'm really direct, and it doesn't always come off okay. And that's okay. That's not my problem. Like, it's your responsibility to tell me, like, hey, that sounded a little harsh. Can you explain it a little bit more? Like, that's other people's responsibility to own their power in asking me for clarification on something that felt too big for them.
Yeah. I mean, it just points to what you're doing now is like burning down the system and starting something new.
Yes, exactly.
Can you tell me how quadruple fire shows up for you in motherhood and in relationships?
It's real interesting.
I mean, I think like the mask part, like, I think for me, motherhood, there's no masking it's like, it's actually the rawness of my triple fire is like, here it comes, so it's having to kind of nurture, not tame, but like be really empathetic.
Yes.
In that way.
Absolutely. So a beautiful way to explain this is, we don't want to tamper it, but it's like an oven, like a gas oven, where you can light it and make the flame really big, or you can let it be a little bit more, a little bit calmer and let things simmer a little bit more. So having, like, really learning that, because typically what we see in this world is, I was raised to really dim my light. So it got really hot for a while there.
Yes.
And I had to
underneath. Yeah.
Exactly. Because once I ignited it, once I allowed myself, like, it was really hot, and I was having a lot of like hard conversations. I was having a lot of not so great conversation. I wasn't showing up in the brilliance of the light because it had been tamed for so long that I just let it burn. So it's finding that harmony with it and letting it be, and knowing when it's important to turn it up, and knowing when the situation isn't as heated as it needs to be. Like, because as a fire, triple fire, quadruple fire, we get hot pretty quick. We are pretty quick to burn. And so learning how, like, hey, like, maybe I need to ask another clarifying question before I assume that what they said was intended to be the way that I took it.
Oh my God, yes. That happens a lot to me.
Yes. Same.
Especially if I'm reading something, I'm like, oh, really? Really? In my mind. But then I'm like, oh, okay, hey.
Yes, exactly.
And
Exactly.
to clarify for people listening, we're talking about astrology and the fire signs.
Yes.
That's what's happening, in case I didn't mention that. But
Yes.
I love that idea because I think it's very similar for me too, of like, once I was able to kind of reclaim that or know that about myself, which just happened
Uh-huh.
in, the 3 years ago,
Yeah.
I understood my anger. I
Yes.
understood my hotness, my quickness, my like temper. And it just gave me a little bit more of an invitation of like, okay, this is
Uh-huh.
naturally in you. How the
Mm-hmm.
hell are you going to work with it? And
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
where do you like let go of the shame around it? Shame was a big one
Uh-huh.
for me, I think, especially in
Yes.
motherhood.
Yes.
What
Absolutely.
about you?
Yeah. Shame. I mean, shame was huge. And it was definitely a big shadowy part in being able to just own who I was, and that my heat and my fire didn't make me a bad person. Like people like to
Yeah.
often say, is like, you're so, like, again, you're bitchy, or you're, whatever that is. And it's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not ill intent in what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm just speaking the truth in an assertive way. And our culture is so much about softening the blow of like, say it
Yeah.
so that people can hear it. Well,
For women.
yeah, yes,
For women to
exactly.
say that. Yeah.
Yes. And there is
Yeah.
some truth of like, yes, we have to know our audience, and sometimes it is about like, how can I say this in a way that they can hear it? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, okay, this is my truth, and now let me explain it a little differently.
Yes. Are you sorry, I have to do all the
That's
personality
okay.
things.
Yeah.
Do you know the Enneagram? Have you
Yes.
heard what number are you?
9.
You're a 9? So am I.
Yes. Yes. We are clearly aligned, very,
That is
very
so
clearly aligned.
funny. Okay, but 9s have so much fucking anger. So it's
Yes.
just very funny. And also is a peacemaker. So it's just, like I'm
Yes.
just
Exactly.
the combo is just comical.
It really, really is. It really is. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
And it's just a powerhouse. I mean, it really is. We are just powerhouses. We are here for a big reason, which is why we have this big energy. And we were raised in a very diminutive way. And it's like now we're coming into our power. And ultimately, I mean, this is what the world is not liking, is women coming into their power. And
Yeah.
we're seeing this huge, shift, and it's throwing a lot of
Yeah.
people off base.
Mhm. Okay, talk to me. We're just gonna dip into all the like spiritual things that I'm going
Let's go for it.
on. Talk to me about masculine, feminine energy for you
Mhm.
in your fire. Like because I think part of the fire piece is business
Mhm.
of like burning something down to rebuild and having just like a force around that, which feels more masculine energy, like the action
Mhm.
around that.
Yeah.
But then there's also the feminine piece of receiving, being in flow, creative, all the stuff. So
Yeah,
where are you
absolutely.
at right now?
So I spent the majority of my life, I mean, my upbringing in this masculine energy, like I really owned that, with like the doing, the perfectionism, the straight A's in college and high school, the doing all the things, the being the best therapist, the building the private practice, like all of the things was very masculine energy. And I don't want to demonize masculine energy. It is
Right.
needed. It is
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. It is very important for us to get shit done. So then what happened? The pendulum swung all the way over here. I started doing this energy work, and I got real flowy and feminine, and I went all
Yeah.
in, because again, we're all or nothing. I went all in on the feminine flowy energy, and this was after I left my private practice, and I got super into spirituality, and it was beautiful, and it felt so good, especially after so long of not being in the feminine energy. And then again, it's like, well, this doesn't feel good anymore because now it's only feminine. I'm like, I need to bring it into that, and having this balance and being able to
Yeah.
find this harmony, this divine union of the masculine and feminine, of like, yes, we can be in this flowy, slow morning of the morning routine, and we got to get shit done to make money, because we do still need to make money. Like, we're not here just to be bajillionaires, but we need to make money to pay the bills and keep the lights on in the house. And so
Yes.
really, again, there's so much of, and I love this conversation, I'll tell you in a minute, but there's so much of finding this middle ground,
Mm.
finding this middle way, finding this harmony and this union, with all of the energies. And again, beautiful. I pulled the card this morning, and it was Middle Earth, and I'm like, oh,
Oh
like, this
my
is a great conversation. So
gosh.
again, this middle, or like finding this middle way between heaven and earth, and again, grounded in lightness and all of, masculine,
Yeah.
feminine, and really finding this divine union.
I love that. Yes. You know what's interesting? I think there's just been a huge push for feminine energy, and a lot of women, including myself, are like, okay, great. How do I do that? What do you mean I've been in my masculine? Blah, 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 blah. Like, it feels a little bit like an attack, and then also like hard to hold on to, or hard to harness, hard to integrate.
Yes.
And I do think the message here, if you guys hear nothing else, is to bring in the feminine energy, because we've been in our masculine energy. It's not to
Yes.
throw out the masculine, but it is how to bring
No.
our balance in. But I think
Mm-hmm.
feminine energy had to be so loud for this
Mm-hmm.
disruption. So it's less of like, you need to be in your feminine energy all the time. It's more of like, hey, here's this reminder of this other beautiful half of you. Have you been tapping into that as well or not? And just as an invitation of it, not a good or bad, not a you're doing this right or wrong,
Yes.
but is this part of why you've been burnt out for so long? You know?
Absolutely. And to be really clear, this huge push for feminine energy, there are so many of these people, these teachers, these coaches pushing feminine energy from masculine energy. They are
Yes, yes,
it's like the wolf in sheep's
yes.
clothing, like we're saying all the good right
Yes,
things, but we're
yes.
actually being really hustle culture. We're actually
Yeah.
being very masculine in it. And so that's where a lot of this confusion really, really lies, is because the messaging says one thing, but it's incongruent to what it's actually doing and what it's actually being. And so
Yeah.
it really is the awareness of like getting into yourself and figuring out for you, what is your divine feminine? What is your divine masculine? What does that look like? What
Mm,
does that feel like for you? And it's not what anybody else tells you it is.
I love that. So finding your own. Can you describe what your divine masculine and feminine traits are, or currently right now? Those get to shift and change.
Yeah, absolutely. So my divine feminine really allows me to sit and meditate and flow with my body and feel the energy of my body. My divine masculine gets shit done. Like when I need to do
Yes.
things, I am tapping into that energy. Like when I am like needing
Yeah.
to write emails, I have a slew of things I need to do today because I've been a little flowy, and I'm like, I need to be productive.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
get to, and
I
this
love
is the
that.
beautiful thing, is I get to be productive
Mhm.
because my feminine gets to be flowy and fluid, and
Yeah.
they work
Yes.
together. And that is the divine union, is like one allows the other to be in
Mhm.
who they are without feeling shame or guilt or upset about it. It's like, no, okay, so yeah, we're having our fluid morning time. And now we're having our getting productive and doing things time.
Yeah. Has that changed? Are you in a relationship?
Um, it's complicated, but yes,
Okay. Yeah.
I have a co-parenting relationship with my partner, with my son's
Yes.
dad. Yes.
Okay. So I'm just curious if that has changed or shifted anything with you in co-parenting.
Yes, absolutely. My son's dad is a beautiful human being. I love him. We are very, very um, good together. We have a lot of fun, and he is very, very toxic masculine culture. So
That's fun.
me moving through this stuff has led to a lot of complications in that relationship and in that dynamic. And the realization, and I've told him this, and he doesn't hear it, and that's okay. I'm like, you don't actually like me. You like the idea of who I am in your world. You want me to be who you want me to be in your world, and that is not who I am. And it's that awareness, and it's coming into that, and it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of like conversation and discussion, and everything changes, next month
Yeah.
after my son graduates, and all of this, and it's okay, and we're leaving it
Yeah.
open, and we're, again, no matter what happens, I will always deeply love him, and he will always be one of my best friends, and we will always be a support for one another. And we don't live in the same world. We
Anymore.
don't have the same worldview, because I'm not willing to sacrifice me for what's best for him.
Yeah.
And that's where a huge
Yeah.
shift comes. And that is the number one question, or the number one concern people have when they come to meet with me or when they start this work, is I don't want to lose people. And I tell them, you will, but you will be
Yeah.
ready to let them go and release them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be fireworks and burning it down. It can just be this readiness because you're
Yeah.
stepping into yourself and who you are. And that's beautiful. But you will lose people when you do this
Yeah.
healing work. You just will. It's unavoidable because you will outgrow them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the mask that when you take that off, then you really show that to the other person, and they're like, "Hey, hey, this isn't who you are," right? And you're like, "But I've never felt more like myself ever."
Exactly.
And so it is that hard. There's so much grief in that. There's so much sorrow, and there's so much more like, I can't go back. I can't put this mask back on,
right?
Just for you to feel safe again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that is really hard. And I'm hearing that. I mean, this is for myself, but also for clients and a lot of females in my life, is like, I'm changing and shifting so much that my relationships, friendships are different. My marriage is different, and it's scary. It's really scary.
Absolutely. And that's why that foundation work of Muladhara is so important. So we can come back in and ground. And again, this is what we do with trauma. We do this titration, this oscillation. We go out, skirt the outer edges of trauma. We come back out, and then we skirt it a little deeper, and then we come back out. It's the same thing. We make sure that we have the tools and the resources to ground ourselves in who we are. So that when it does get hard, we know we're solid. We feel safe in ourselves without needing to be safe in other people or anywhere else. We can find safety within ourselves. It lives within us.
Yeah. I have, another personal question.
That's okay.
Come on, girl.
Open book.
Because I mean, I feel that in the marriage, that shift, but with children, my kids are young, or they're 4 and soon to be 6. But I'm curious for you, having an older child, as you have kind of taken off your mask and shift. I feel like children shift with you a lot more easier than a partner, but I'm just curious of what your experience with your son has been in that.
It's been beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. I mean, having a child is basically the longest, most drawn out breakup of your life. I mean, because ultimately, but he has, he does do certain meditation things with me. He does like cold plunges. Like, he's been open to doing more things that I like to do. And he is still very connected with his dad and his dad's point of view. And he's still, so there is this balance, and he is still going to go out and find himself and find his way and figure out what works for him. But it's been beautiful to offer him a different perspective and different skills, rather than the traditional ways for men to manage their emotions, or to, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I'm in my deep smut phase of reading, but it's all from a female perspective. So I'm like, man, this guy, like morally gray guys, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's dark. I just read a dark romance, and I'm like, what the hell? But I'm like, what is this unleashing for me? I don't know, but I'm very into it.
I love it.
Because I feel like my feminine energy is sexuality, it's sensuality, it is touch, it's like dance, it's so body and pleasure focused for me. There's creative, but yes. Creative is there, but creative feels a little bit more in business, a little more action. I like it, it's just different. I don't know for me right now as it's unfolding. But as you're talking about like how to raise men, I have a son and a daughter. And then the masculine and feminine energy, where I feel like I'm needing more masculine energy from a masculine in my life, like this take charge. But I'm reading all this smut, so I'm like, what is happening? Is this what I really want? But I don't know where I'm going with this, guys. That's the divine masculine within yourself. Like, that's where you can tap into that masculine energy. And yes, exploring it outside of yourself as well. But is there an aspect of your divine masculine energy that needs to come up and take some charge and voice that, maybe whether it's to your partner or to the other people in your life, of like, I need a little bit more of the take charge energy. Yeah, I need a little bit more of the smut. I love it. I love it so much.
The other thing I would say is, since this is how it's surfacing in your life and in your experiences, um, this relationship with this sensuality is really exploring what that looked like growing up. What were the messages about sex, about relationships, about gender roles? Like, how
Yeah.
are those programs? Because that's what seems like, and this is just
Yeah.
my perspective, that's what seems like is unraveling and is showing a new way for
Yeah.
you
Mm-hmm.
than how you were raised. Because a lot of us women of our
Yep.
generation were raised in this super good girl, like, don't have sex before marriage, like all of this energy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was very harmful to us.
Yes. Okay,
And
but good girl is getting reclaimed as a very good smutty.
yes,
So when you
yes,
said good
yeah,
girl, I was like, yes, I am.
yeah. Exactly. There is a song, and if I can find it, I'll send it to you. But the line is, "Good girls do bad things sometimes, and we get away with it."
Ah,
I'm like, yes,
yes. Yes.
that
Yes.
is the
It's so
energy.
good.
Hmm.
It is. It is. And I think, I went to private school my whole life, but my family wasn't very religious themselves. Um, and so I think I was actually like the good girl, but like that went crazy, but everybody thought I was like the good girl. And I was like
Yeah,
just a
same,
like fire hose. Just like,
same.
but without that containment of like, oh, I really care about myself. I care about my body. I
Hmm.
respect myself. It was fun, but it was also just very wild, where now it feels like a reclaiming of who I am and confidence in my body, and like worshiping my body and unleashing the sensuality in a beautiful, empowering way, versus my 20s where I was like, somebody love me. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I love me.
exactly. And that's the huge difference between the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine, and the divine masculine or divine feminine. Again, so in our 20s, when we were so wounded in our feminine, of course, that's what we were seeking. We were seeking that wild energy. We were breaking free from what we were trained and taught to be.
Yeah.
But then we were feeling so much shame about it, right?
Yes.
Then we had
Yeah.
so much shame about it.
Yep.
And so now, having gone through this healing work and reclaiming that right to be what we hear sometimes called the sacred slut, we call it the smut, we call it whatever it is. It's like, it's
Yeah.
that, you know, that energy of, it's okay for me to be sensual and sexual, and it's
Yeah.
part of my power. It's part of the beauty. I mean, we
Yeah.
create life
Mhm.
out of our sexuality and our sensuality. I mean, that's what we're
Yes.
doing. It's all this womb space. It's all this sacral chakra work. And this is what a lot comes up when I move through with people with their sacral, of a lot of, sexualized trauma, or gender beliefs, or wounded feminine energy, wounded masculine energy. And it's really a reclaiming of all of that.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of generational stuff in the body?
Yes.
Do you know? Like, yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
in the body and the mind, I mean, just the mindset, the limiting beliefs. And then, yes, about how, like, we do this just like our mom, or just like our grandma, and she did just
Yeah.
like her mom, and, all of these things of, like, yeah, it goes back layers and layers and layers.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick fire of like what you're into, and you could say yes or no.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Past lives,
Yes.
tarot.
Yes. You
Where's
got
my
to be
other quick?
faster. You got to be faster if you're doing fast.
Psychic readings.
Yes.
Same thing. Do you do tarot yourself?
I do oracle cards more than tarot,
Okay.
but
Got
I
it.
have, been interested in exploring tarot.
Okay, you guys, that's all I have. That's my quick fire. Because I was like, you're already into Reiki. I'm like, what
Uh-huh.
are the other weird things?
I mean, Akashic Records.
Yes.
Yes.
You into that? Okay.
Yes.
Microdosing.
Yes.
Macro going to be.
Yes.
Dose?
I did one macro, and it was by myself, and it was wildly uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah.
But again,
cacao
here's yes, I
Go
do
ahead.
cacao, but with the with getting into like macrodosing, getting into psilocybin,
Mhm.
like, so much of that ceremony was important for me, because it was untangling the drug, the anti-drug culture, and the fear around
Yeah.
drugs that I was raised in.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
Yeah.
I go out and do all the drugs, but I'm not judging people for doing it, but really shifting the perspective on what is drug and what is medicine. And the intention behind using it, and how it is proven to be so supportive for PTSD, for
Yeah.
moving through things. So a lot of that people might say bad trip, but it really wasn't. It was just an uncomfortable situation. Was the untangling of those fears and beliefs, because it will show up. Whatever you're holding on to will show up in these experiencing. I've done a lot with Kambo as well, a lot with Sananga, a lot with Hape, and all of these things. Again, they open things up that you've been afraid of or been hiding away. Or
are you doing this in Arizona? Or are you traveling to go do this?
No, I've done it here.
Yeah. With yourself or with a guide?
I've had a guide do Kambo. I have a very good friend who does Kambo. I do Hape by myself. I've done Sananga by myself, but also in ceremony within community as well. Okay. And then, the macrodose I just did by myself. And part of that was I would never, everybody has their own experience, but I did it with the chocolates. And it was so disgusting. Yeah. It was so disgusting, and so it made me so nauseous. So I will not do the chocolates again. Okay.
You live, you learn.
You learn, and then you get pills. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh my gosh, I love it. Can you kind of name one thing from a psychedelic experience that you had that was like the biggest, another like aha spiritual moment for you? Or
so that was the only one I've ever done was of psychedelic. Like I've done microdosing, which was beautiful for creativity and energy. But you don't have like a psychedelic experience from it.
Yeah.
You feel a little bit of a shift. You just feel a little bit of a shift in the states. So I haven't done ayahuasca or any other psychedelics aside from that one experience. And again, what was powerful that came out of that was the untangling of my fear.
What did you
see? It was just a lot of colors. Like I couldn't even hang out in it very long. Like I was so nauseous. I was like, I probably ate like 47 crackers, like saltine crackers. I kept getting up and moving around. Like I couldn't, my body was so uncomfortable. My brain was so uncomfortable that I couldn't really sit in it very well.
Yeah.
So I took a bath. I watched some TV.
Great.
I did all the things that people are like, just sit. And I'm like, I couldn't. I couldn't. And because I didn't have anybody with me, I couldn't, I just couldn't calm myself down.
Yeah. Which is exactly what you should have done. Is to, if you can't stay in that space, don't force yourself to stay in that space.
Exactly.
There's no point.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We went through everything. My quick fire was only 3 things, but
it was a good 3 things.
I know. Okay, I feel like we're bouncing around a lot, but I want to know who needs to come to you for one-on-one coaching? Like what are they searching for to working through, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I work primarily with women. If you are a woman who is feeling lost in your career, lost in your life, have tried all the things and just don't understand why you don't feel connected or don't feel motivated or inspired, a lot of that has to do with the trauma that you've experienced. And some people don't relate to trauma, so the emotional experiences that you're carrying in your body. And what we want to do is we want to connect with the body. If you find yourself just anxious, always thinking, always planning, always working from your head, you'd be a perfect candidate to come into your body and work with me and tap into the wisdom of your body, because you're seeking for validation, you're seeking for direction from outside of yourself. But every single thing you need is within you already. And the only thing that those people outside of you are doing is they're activating something within you that you already know. And if we can tap into that, and if we can remember that wisdom within yourself, you don't need to search outside of yourself ever again.
Yeah. Ooh, so powerful. And so powerful, I think, for women and men to reclaim that wisdom for themselves. Absolutely. It's all in here.
Absolutely.
Carah, so fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Where can people find you? What's the best place?
The best place is going to be on Instagram right now. So Carah.Elizabeth. I also have a website, but I'm in the process of rebuilding the website. But it is just my name, CarahElizabeth.com. And those are the best 2 places. There'll be contact information on either of those places to reach me to see what I'm doing, see what I'm all around.
Yay. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. So
awesome.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation, and I love how parallel all of our things are.
My middle name is Elizabeth, so
of course it is.
Everyone's listening like, what are these girls talking about? They're just
Exactly.
talking. I'm like, that's fine, guys.
This is
Thank
the best
you guys
kind
for
of
being here.
Yes, this is the best kind of podcast where it's just so free for all. I love it so much. Thank you.
Yes. All right. We'll see you next time. We'll have you on again. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. We are so grateful for your listening ears, for your open hearts. And if you are loving what you're hearing, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts so that we can continue to reach and help others. We'll see you next time.